Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Earn It podcast, making it to and through nursing school. I am your host. What if you could spend most of your time learning and less time taking notes, making flashcards, transcribing things from a PowerPoint or whatever? Today is Tuesday, March 11th, and on today's episode, we will be talking about how to use AI to learn faster and therefore get better grades. All right, now I'm going to say on the outset of this, this is something that's recently been brought to my attention from a couple of students that I go to school with, and I was immediately, kind of skeptical because maybe it's the, kind of when I went through everything, but being, from an IT realm and a cybersecurity realm, I'm naturally just kind of wary of artificial intelligence, and I have been, so I've made a point out of refusing to use AI for a couple of different reasons. One, I didn't want to get fed false information because sometimes ChatGPT, for instance, makes between 5 and 20%, like it gives you 5 and 20% false information. I really didn't want, if you think about if you became really dependent on an AI tool and you were getting even 10% false information, we don't retain 100% of everything anyway. That means if you somehow all of a sudden retain 100% of every single thing and you were dependent on AI, and it also covered everything that you needed to learn, which is unlikely, then the highest you could get is like a 90%, right? So if you take into account that you don't really, absorb more than 60 to 70% of all material that you're exposed to, then you're looking at getting at highest a low to mid B using AI tools. However, that's because I guess I failed to realize that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So what I'm going to go over is a couple of different tools, which I know there are probably a lot out there, and no, ChatGPT has nothing to do with what I am talking about today. So if you've been trying to use ChatGPT, whether you've had good experiences or not, that's not what this episode is about. The two tools I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to specifically talk about why they would be useful as well, and when to use them, when not to use them, because obviously I still am of the school of thought you probably could become too dependent on an AI tool. And you probably still can get some false information. So because, we have the responsibility to make sure that we're getting and intaking all the correct information that we're supposed to be, you're going to have to double check these things and make sure that they make sense. So it's not like you're going to use these tools and not do anything else other than use these tools, like not show up to class, not read, not go. That's not what I'm talking about. The problem is right now, even if you have a really, really, even if you have a really, really efficient way of getting the information from your instructor, or from the book, or from PowerPoints into a form that you can study relatively quickly, I guarantee you're still spending a couple of hours at the very least. What if this could get down to about 5 minutes? What if you could show up to class having already gone over flashcards for the material that is going to be gone over? And there are some other options. I don't want to spoil anything just yet. So let's just jump right into kind of, first of all, why is this? How should you use it? The faster that you can get to reviewing something and deep diving on something, the better that you're going to learn it. And the more long-term you're going to retain these things for a longer period of time. So the ideal would be, let's say you have a 2-hour lecture on Monday. Your usual routine is maybe at the best. Now, this is at the most efficient. I see a lot of people that just take notes on PowerPoint. So let's say you show up to class and that's the first time that you're looking at your PowerPoints. Maybe you've read the chapters before that, but likely I'm going to assume you don't have the time. Let's say you're not reading chapters. You show up to class, you write notes on the PowerPoint. Then later, you make notes either you rewrite those out, which I doubt you will, but at the very least, at some point, you're going to read over them over and over again, and then you're going to make flashcards, and then you're going to study them, and then you're going to get more material, and then repeat the process until you finally start the maybe you get a practice test, but most of the time you're not going to get a practice test, and then the first time you're seeing kind of semi-difficult questions that are formed with a multiple choice or select all that apply, the first time you see that is on your exam. Now, this does not sound ideal. So what this is going to get you is, let's say Monday before class, you get your PowerPoint, and then let's say 5 minutes later, you have flashcards from that PowerPoint. At the minimum, I'm not going to ruin too many things. Let's say you have, okay, I am. Let's say you have flashcards from that, and let's say you have a study guide from that. And also, let's say that you have a practice quizzes, at least one or two, on that material that you're about to cover. Well, then you're going to just kind of look over some of these things, if possible. The ideal thing would be to kind of look over the questions. Don't try to answer them. Look over the questions, look over some flashcards, look at the PowerPoint, and then class begins. And then you can kind of make your little notes if you deem necessary. You can kind of star some things, or you could just, I don't know, not do that. You could just pay close attention and then really engage during class and try to come up with any questions, especially because you've seen quiz questions already. You've seen flashcards. You've seen things from a 100-foot view or 5-mile view, whatever the hell people say. You've seen the big picture because you've seen things like a study guide. Now what you're going to do is you're going to leave class and do whatever else you got to do. And later that day, you're not going to be making flashcards. You're not going to be rewriting your notes. You're going to be going over flashcards a couple times. You're going to be going over a study guide, and then you're going to be answering questions on the first day that you are exposed to the material. What other way couldn't you, without these tools, you have no other way of, in the same day, without spending countless hours, leaving class and immediately going over flashcards. Sitting down to do the flashcards is one thing, but let's you go into the next room, take a 5-minute break, and after that 5-minute break, your flashcards are already there, and you're going to go over your flashcards. And then later that day, you're going to take anywhere from a 20 to a 50 to a 100 question quiz on it, and then you're going to explore why those answers aren't correct. So let's get into the tools and what the hell I'm talking about here. The first tool, and I can leave some links in the description of this podcast episode. The first thing that this one I found on my own after getting the idea from students and found out that some people were doing this. And again, I do relatively well without AI tools, but things are only getting more difficult and more hectic, right? So Atlas, 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 like, a book of maps, .org. Here's what you can do, folks. Let's say you haven't taken notes yet. You want the really quick and dirty way of doing it. You're going to download your PowerPoint from whatever kind of learning platform that you use, and then you're going to just simply go to atlas.org and pick from one of many options. So the options they have are study guides, practice quizzes. You get to specify if they're hard or not. You get to specify how many questions, and you also get to choose whether you just want flashcards or whether you want all three of these. This is limited to 2 kind of actions per day. So I just want you to know that unless you want to pay a yearly subscription or $16 a month if you pay it monthly, if you pay the yearly, it's $7.99 per month, but you have to pay for it all at once. I mean, you could get away with doing that with the 2 tools that I'm talking about. You can get away with getting what you need for free, but I spend $15 a month on dumber stuff than this. So, but we won't. It's not necessary. You can do two things. Let's say you do a practice quiz and you do flashcards because I want you to hold off on the study guide. I wouldn't get the study guide from here per se because there's more useful and absolutely free tools that I'm going to talk about later. I'm going to keep it to 2 tools, by the way, so everybody can kind of pay full mind. Excuse me. So you'll choose practice quiz, flashcards, and what's going to happen is you're going to make some specifications after you simply upload a PowerPoint. So you're going to download your PowerPoint presentation, you're going to upload that PowerPoint, and you're going to click a couple of buttons and specify what you want. And then within 2 minutes, you have and these can get very difficult, a difficult practice quiz that you're going to wait on, and as many flashcards as you specified. And it also asks you to put notes in. So if it's like, well, it'll ask you like, what kind of things do you want to make sure are covered in the flashcards? Now, usually for a whole section of like 3 weeks, you would maybe have around 80 to 100 flashcards, maybe a little bit more. But if you wanted to get crazy, on one single lecture, you want 50 to 100 flashcards, go ahead and do it. It will do it. And let's say it's pharmacology. You can say, I need all of these to have a medication with the drug class and the uses and all the interactions and all that. You can tell it that and it will do it. And I'll tell you that it did it pretty good. The only thing that I'll say about atlas.org is that some of the practice questions were a little off. So again, this gets you thinking, but not every one of these questions are going to be prim and proper. But then again, not every question that we get on an exam is prim and proper. And roughly about 40 to 60% of the time, grades change because there's a question or two that just aren't valid. The same thing can happen here. AI is by no means perfect, but this is really freaking good because you currently don't have anything like this, I guarantee you. Not with this amount of time, okay? Because in our books, at least, I don't know, depending on where you go to school, you have electronic books and you can go in and have it make quizzes. But depending on what your class is, most of the time, it goes into a lot more detail than you actually truly need. So you're going to get quizzed on things that your instructor does not want you to know. If they have put it in a PowerPoint, that's not an end all be all. Like, that's not what this is. But it's a really good starting place where it is information that they cared enough, whether it's, I know you go through things, it's like, oh, I want you to remember this, I want you to remember that, or this is highlighted on slides and this isn't. Well, the thing about it is your teacher has spent a long time putting a PowerPoint presentation together. And let me just tell you from previous teaching experience making PowerPoints, I got rid of my PowerPoints because it took me so much time to make the PowerPoints and keep them updated with new updated information. And design them and animations sometimes and put them in the right order and right in format, that I just got rid of my PowerPoints altogether. Your teacher spends a lot of time putting those PowerPoints together. So if it's in a PowerPoint, chances are they want you to know it. So again, it's a good place to start. Upload a freaking PowerPoint, get you a practice quiz, get you some flashcards. Again, it gets the ball rolling faster than you normally would. Should you still read over the flashcard or the PowerPoints? Should you still look a little bit into the book? Should you still ask your instructor questions? Yes, and yes. But this gets the ball rolling. Again, that's atlas.org. If you try to do more than 2 things in one day, it is going to prompt you to pay them money. So obviously be careful on that. Not too much here. I don't want too long of an episode, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next sort of thing. Notebook LM. This is a company. This is a thing that Google does. You cannot upload this is the same thing where you upload a PowerPoint, but you have to make that PowerPoint into a PDF format. So you, in a way, and the other website also, it doesn't require that it's a PowerPoint either. You can upload all types of media. But the Notebook LM, somebody in class turned me on to this tool specifically. There's one more flashcard thing that I'll mention. I have not yet, as of the recording this, maybe by the time this is published, but as of the time of me recording this, I have not yet tried it yet. Um, but this option I have tried, Notebook LM by Google. Again, free, absolutely positively free. I'm not sure if there's an upgrade. I haven't come across it. I've done a lot on it and it hasn't asked me to upgrade. So you can do the practice quizzes, you can do study guides. The study guide is solid. I mean, if you want a quick, it's a little bit higher quality in my opinion. So if you want a very lengthy study guide that has all of the terms and definitions and everything, it extracts it all out. What this does is it doesn't just take the information from the PowerPoint. So let's say that I'm just going to stick with, or let's say you're doing med surg and doing the cardiovascular system, and your slides have various information on them. What this does is take that, it takes and digests that information in. Okay, LM stands for language model, right? And what it does is it does kind of what ChatGPT and a lot of other things do, AI tools do that have access to the internet. It will go out there and kind of get context from other sources that are real and are legitimate. Again, it is your job to double check the information, but from the experience that I've had, it basically uses already established information, very specific to exactly what you're needing to know, to expand on various things and offer big explanations, so on and so forth. That's just the study guide part, which I don't really use too much. You could say, like, you could use it to fill in flashcards that it didn't really make quite right, whatever. I haven't had any problems out of the flashcards either. So again, do the study guide. I don't know. I didn't see that it had, let me go here. I'm actually in it right now. Let me go and see if, is there something for, no. So the only thing is get your quizzes from atlas.org. Notebook LM does not have quizzes, but it has some other cool stuff that I'll tell you about in just one second. So again, it has to be a PDF. You have, it kind of takes everything in and gives you a little chat box. So the first thing it does as soon as it's done processing all the information is it'll bring you to a screen that looks like a little ChatGPT. And so it makes a bot that you can chat with that is just as smart as ChatGPT, but it's as if ChatGPT was only it's only regarding the information and the related information to the PowerPoint that you uploaded. So you can ask it specific questions and have a conversation with it about this specific material, and it uses the material that you gave it as context, right? Because the worry is like, oh yeah, that might be correct and this might be correct, but is it correct according to the test that I'm going to take? Is it correct according to what my teacher said and what the PowerPoint say? In this case, yes, 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 and yes, right? You're going to get the ability to do this. I've only done this a little bit because, again, I don't have time to sit here and chat, right? So something else that this does that I find to be really cool and kind of worth it. Let's just say this. Not every single lecture do you have the ability to, not every teacher is going to be recording while they're lecturing, right? So even if they did, a lot of recorded lectures are not the best quality in the world. And they're not really made for like, oh, let me turn it on, play it through the speakers of my car, and while I drive around or while I run errands or while I'm doing dishes, let me listen to it. You know what's really good for that? Podcasts are really good for that. Hence, if you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts. However, you're not listening to this podcast and studying, right? Like, I'm not helping you study for what you need to study right now. Okay, so the short end of it is this tool also makes a podcast episode of like 2 people or more talking about the subject matter in your PowerPoint using all the information from your PowerPoint. It makes its own analogies that make perfect sense. And these analogies are not included in your PowerPoint, and they are not like, maybe they're not they're like, it's very smart, and then it makes up different analogies and will explain them to you on the fly, and it's kind of conversational. A little hint, if you're going to do this, if you get excited, you pause this podcast and you went to do this, just a little tip though first, it takes a pretty good amount of time. So you're going to upload it and it's going to process it. You're going to have to click. There's an option for audio overview. It will take several minutes, but it like for me, the first one I did, it took about 5 to 10 minutes, which doesn't sound long, but that's long when obviously you don't need to do this and wait on it like you're sitting there on a screen. Do other things while you're doing this. But in less than 10 minutes, it spat me out a 48-minute episode. And it was like two people chatting and going over everything in order in my PowerPoint, but it was in the form of a conversation. It wasn't reading the PowerPoints. It was like two people were talking about it. It was like somebody had a subject matter expert on there. And then the person was like, oh, this is like that. And they would provide an analogy about it, like, oh, so what you're saying is this. And it would simplify it and put it into an analogy form. So it was a really cool tool. And so this is kind of a gap in the market that, you're not really going to see a lot, which is if you have, you can listen to this is about as long as a lecture, but you're basically sitting and listening to two people talk about the subject. So it's a really cool feature to literally have a podcast freaking episode on the fly about what you went over that week. So what you could do is we'll put it together in a minute. We'll put it all together, kind of the ideal situation in a minute. I won't kind of do that right now. But again, what's really cool about this, other than the analogies, is that this is really good for passive learning. You're listening to it kind of on the fly. Another really cool thing that the Google tool does, Notebook LM, is that it will make an FAQ. You can click, there's a button that says FAQ. And for the first one I did, it's not that many questions. For like 50 slides, it was 8 questions. So let me just give you an example. What are some common, so it was, you know what FAQs are, right? Frequently asked questions. So I was like, okay, make me a frequently asked questions. Let me go to, which one do I want to do? What are the main types of, no, I don't want to do that one. What do I do? Something kind of cool. What are the common mechanisms of action by which antimicrobial drugs exert their effects, right? It gives you a paragraph on this, right? So it's like antimicrobial drugs encompassing antibacterials, antifungals, and antivirals employ various mechanisms to combat infections. Antibacterials commonly inhibit bacterial cell wall synthesis. For example, penicillin, cephalosporins alter cell wall permeability like nystatins, inhibit protein synthesis like macrolides, aminoglycosides, tetracycline. So it's like it's going through everything and it gives you a long explanation, and it kind of uses most of the information from the PowerPoint and then adds very little kind of contextual information to make it flow, because PowerPoints are, at least they're supposed to be, bullet points, right? They're little bullet points. This makes it into forms that you can digest. It's more normalized, right? You can't just learn from a PowerPoint. You have to, that's what the point of a lecture with the PowerPoint is. You have to fill in everything between the lines, right? So it's kind of corny too. The podcast thing, I forgot to mention, the podcast thing is kind of weird. It's like somebody trying to go, right? Like the other person while one person is talking, and it's kind of awkward, and some of the words sound weird. But it's a podcast on the fly for specifically what you need to learn. So you can't complain terribly too much. It's kind of funny. If anything, it kind of keeps you engaged. Like, oh my God, that's really weird. Oh my God, that's really weird. But, so asking it clarifying questions, the frequently asked questions. How do we use this? Why would we use this? Again, we're just cutting time out for, and we're using these learning tools faster, so that we can start learning from day one, instead of let me go to, I mean, you do learn a little bit from lecture. You do learn, I mean, it's like 4 to 5%, right? Read the power, just from reading a PowerPoint and listening to someone without taking notes for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. You can't walk out of there and go take a test, right? You'd probably fail that test. But if you could all in the same day go over an entirety of flashcards and go over quiz questions and listen to a damn podcast on what you did, I mean, guys, you can't really go wrong there, because you know what? The next day you have other information from other classes to do. So you can build the tools for the next class. And the rest of the week, like, you're going over all of these things. You're not spending any of your time doing any of that. You already have all this set and good to go. Your time matters like more than anything, okay? And more importantly, this allows you to go deeper. So if you're noticing like, oh, there are some things that my instructor mentioned that aren't really in these flashcards, they're not really asked about too much. Well, then you still might have to make some flashcards, but you're not making 50, 60, 80, 100 of them. You're making like 10 to 20 of them. And by the time you're doing that, you're realizing what's missing, which means but if you get to that point, you're only going to get there in 1 to 2 days instead of like 5 or 6. And another thing is, that means you're learning a lot right off the get-go. That's the whole point of this, is learning faster, okay? So let's put it all together. This is just one scenario. Again, this is kind of off the cuff here. One scenario in which you might use this, okay? What would I do? Okay, Monday is class. It's Friday. And they just released stuff for the next week. They gave the PowerPoints and they gave the assignments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download those 1 to 2 PowerPoints for Monday's class. You can do Tuesday's class too, but for simplicity's sake and making this not go on and on, we're going to download the PowerPoints for the class or classes. And then I'm going to go over to atlas.org and I'm going to upload them and say, I want a practice quiz. This is another reason why you want to do like one, because you can only do 2 things on this. For this, I want a practice quiz and I want flashcards. Okay? Practice quiz and flashcards on this one class. Now you have practice quiz and you have flashcards. While that's going, that'll take maybe a minute. Then you're going to go into your PowerPoints, you're going to download it as a PDF, and then you're going to upload it into Notebook LM. And you're going to say that you want the audio, you want a study guide, and you want frequently asked questions. Okay? Now, what are you going to do over the weekend or even later that day, Friday? You're just going to kind of really quickly look at the study guide. You're going to look. You're not trying to learn anything yet. Your eyes are going on the PowerPoint, and then you're looking at the study guide. Okay? That's it. That's all you need to do. You just have eyes on it. Make sure you organize everything. Make sure everything's easily accessible. And make sure that podcast episode is in a place where you can easily play it in the car later. Let's say you work the whole weekend. But if you don't work the whole weekend, guess what you're doing? You're going over those flashcards. Or maybe you start off by listening to the podcast. I'd recommend maybe starting off just listening to the podcast. And then the next day, you're going to just flip through, again, not study, flip through those flashcards. Now on Monday, you are just eyes on instructor, and you're constantly reflecting back to the podcast that you heard, to the flashcards that you saw. And guess what? As soon as class is over, you're going to use that class time to jot down things that you need to make flashcards about that you know for a fact weren't in the flashcards. That's what you're going to do. Okay. So as soon as you get out of class, you have maybe 10 flashcards, maximum of 20 of things that you have written down that were not in an FAQ, were not in a podcast, were not in flashcards. You're going to put all of that together. You're going to make your little measly 10 or 20 flashcards. Now, it's still Monday, and this is like 30 minutes after class. Okay. So 30 minutes after class, you have every single thing you need. And then you're going to start studying your flashcards. You're going to take 2 days and study those flashcards. Okay. And then on the third day, you're going to do the practice quiz. And then you're going to take all that information that you got wrong, because what I want to say is, with every single one of those practice quizzes, when you answer a question wrong, you get a long explanation of why you got it wrong. Now, you're going to make sure to check that information. I got a couple of questions that it was incorrect, which is not a big deal. I kind of recognize that. Why? This is why you study first. You don't go straight into the quiz. You study for a couple days before you do the quiz. And you should not be looking at notes or you're trying to take the quiz like it's a test. This is called the performance objective. Your exam is a performance objective. This is what your teachers are trying to prepare you for, okay? So you need to simulate your performance objective as closely as you can. And the main way that you do that is by taking a quiz like it's a test. You're going to take all those incorrect answers. Again, this is a learning exercise, not a real test. Do not freak out when you get half of the 50 questions you asked for wrong. You're going to take those and the explanations, and you're going to dive deep into why they are. Maybe you need to make additional flashcards or additional notes, and then you're going to spend a couple more days studying those, and you're going to redo that quiz. Or you're going to ask for another one or another few questions. If you need clarification and you can't get it from your professor or anybody else or the internet or whatever, you have that little chat box in the Notebook LM that you can have a little conversation with it and get some reasoning out of it, right? You have all of this stuff that you can use at your disposal, because we have other stuff that's going on. So there's several different ways we can go about it. If I go any further, I would be rambling, but maybe it's not for everybody, but all I can say is, if any of that sounded interested to you, it's worth maybe trying one of those things out, and just to see how you do, to see if, do I feel confident any quicker than I usually do? Have I studied up any quicker than I usually do? And if the answer to that is yes, then you need to add some more AI into things. And streamline things even more. So thank you so much for listening to the Earn It Podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please follow, and so that you can stay up to date on all the latest episodes and not have to spend time searching for it, because that's just kind of a pain in the butt. If you would like to come on the podcast to chat, or for a Q&A session, please click the link in the description of this episode and fill out the very short form. Again, thank you so much for listening. Go out there and earn it today. Do a good job, and goodbye.